Hi, I'm Representative Al Baldessaro, and we're back. This is the real show of Who's Looking Out for You, and I have my great co-host, Representative Jeanine, and welcome back again. And
Thank
this
you.
is our second show again.
Yes, we haven't done this in a few years.
Yeah, we've 4 years ago? I think 3 years ago.
I don't know, because prior to that, you produced a show for me here, and so
Right.
I was
Chatting
taping
with
here,
Jeanine.
chatting with Jeanine.
That was a great show.
And before that, I was here with
Frankie
the
Miro.
Honorable Frankie Miro.
Right, yes.
And then there's been other shows like summer specials, chatting politically with Jeanine, and we had Kelly
Right.
out on, and it just kind of evolved over time, and here we're back.
We brought in some great candidates during
Yes, we
that
have,
time.
we have.
Well, you want to introduce our guest that we have?
Sure, I think you've known him longer than I have,
I-
because you were both on the Trump campaign.
Yeah, I've known Sid. We worked the Trump campaign around the country. And
So welcome, Sid Bowdidge.
Sid, welcome.
Bowdidge.
Welcome to
I said
Londonderry.
it wrong, didn't I?
Yeah, welcome to
I
Londonderry.
just waved because I'm way over
Everybody
here.
wants to put an
I don't
R
know
in
if you
there.
know, his wife was involved in the campaign too.
Oh, I didn't know that, but
Very
I
much.
just recently met your wife.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, didn't you work in Washington, or were you on the lead
I
team?
did. I had a job briefly in the Department of Energy before the our wonderful
Oh.
left-wing media took me out.
Now,
Oh.
see, we're going to have a whole other show on just the energy department, because at the State House, the committee I've been on for 4 years now is Science, Technology, and Energy.
Mind you, again, I was only in there for 3 weeks.
So you worked with Rick Perry.
Yes, I was there when Rick came in. He wasn't there when I first got there, but when President Trump brought him in and he officially became the secretary, I was there standing 10 feet away from him while he gave his intro speech to everybody in the DOE,
Right.
which was really terrific. Yeah.
Well, you know, when I was at the White House there, for the signing of the Veterans Accountability Act, you know, for the government to be able to fire people that aren't
Sure,
doing their jobs,
sure.
they attacked me, the newspapers, and they said,
Well, that's nothing new.
"What was I doing in the White House? I wanted Hillary assassinated." But I never said I wanted her
No.
assassinated.
Oh, I remember that.
And what I said was, in accordance with the law, it was on the radio, in accordance with the Constitution, U.S. Code 18, treason still there, firing squad still there. As an American, I had an opinion that she should go in front of a firing squad and shot for treason.
I remember that.
That's my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's in accordance
He was
with the
on my
law.
show in Merrimack soon
Right.
after that. I remember.
And naturally, you have to be found guilty
Right.
in a court of law.
Sure.
But the liberals took that and went wild with it, you know?
I know the feeling, Al.
Yeah.
Hence the title of my book,
Yeah.
A Rush to Judgment,
Right,
was
I'm just
in
gonna
fact.
introduce that.
You
Yeah.
know, that's where the
Yeah,
title.
tell us about this
So,
book
so
here.
first, you were the ground campaign manager?
Well,
For
in
the-
the beginning, you know, again, the title of the book is A Rush to Judgment, a journey with Trump, God, and love. And the way that played out is May 2015, I found myself at home. My wife and I had some troubles. My dad had passed away, and I sat there thinking, what have I done with my life? And she came over and said, I have a movie I want you to watch, honey. It's called God's Not Dead.
Oh, I
So
saw that
being
movie.
an agnostic, I said, sure, I'll watch it. Well, that movie absolutely changed my life that night, and I became a believer. And I spell it all out in the book of how it all felt and what it was like that night. But it was really incredible because I was never a believer in God. Excuse me. And
And what was the name of the movie again?
God's Not Dead.
Yeah, one of
God,
the
I've never seen that
Robinson,
movie.
is that their last name, Robinson? You know, that show that was on the long-bearded family?
No, I
don't
don't
think
think
their last
so.
name
I
Robinson.
don't
Yeah,
think
the
so, but-
Robertsons.
Robertson, that's it.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's not that.
It was one
but-
of them in
The
there?
Duck
in that
Hunters.
movie? Yeah, the Duck Hunt people. I think
Yes,
one of them was in that
yes,
movie.
they were
yeah.
in that movie.
Right.
Yes, terrific movie. I mean, it's a great movie whether you're a believer or you're on the fence or whatever. It's a great movie.
Is that
So-
how you got involved with the Trump campaign?
Well, no.
Yeah, what
so,
came
so you know that occurred, and Denise and I got back together, and shortly after, which is I think the title of my third chapter is "Hey, honey, Trump's coming to town." So she said that to me one night after we were back together. Hey, honey, Trump's coming to town. Want to go see him? And I said, sure. Sounds like fun. Let's go see him for the entertainment factor,
Right.
you know. So we went to he was coming to a house in Bedford where we live, and we attended and came away saying, you know what, we really like his America First agenda. This guy's got something to run on, you know,
Right.
and he's not a politician. So we really liked him. So the next thing you know, as you know, the staff then, which was very small,
Right.
tries to pull people in to volunteer. Next thing I know, Denise is saying to me, hey, honey, let's go phone bank. Well, they want us to phone bank. I said, I don't want to phone bank.
I hate phone banking.
That's why I met him in
I
Manchester.
don't
Yeah,
like
at
phone
first,
banking.
in the
Right,
beginning, right.
So from there, I conceded. I went phone banking, and next thing you know, we were helping to set up events, take them down. Shortly after that, they asked me if I'd drive in the motorcade, and before you know it, we're just full-fledged.
Didn't your wife work in the office or something?
Right, we did. Well,
Right, yeah.
then we were hired on staff. Beginning of October 2015, she and I were both hired on staff to run the Keene campaign office. Before that, we were, as you recall, President Trump was coming to New Hampshire sometimes twice a week.
Right.
So we were setting up, taking down, driving in motorcades. I mean, it was just as
So,
volunteers.
well, you must know Corey Lewandowski then,
Oh, very
too.
well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure,
I've
very
known
well.
Corey for
Yeah.
years.
Corey's the one that brought him on and everything.
Very
and
well.
Matt,
Well, that's
yeah.
how I got to meet Trump, was President Trump. The very first, I don't think he'd even announced yet, there was a breakfast in Nashua, and my boys and I got to go, and it was a small group. So, of course, my son was dying to ask him a question, say, hey, if you can ask Barack Obama, if you could tell him 2 words, what would those 2 words be?
You know, it was weird. In March of 2015, Corey Lewandowski called me, asked me if I would meet with Trump. I said, well, let me think. I got stuff going on, and we're in session. Next thing you know, Dan Tamburello calls me. Next thing you know, Steve Stefanik calls me. Al, you got to do this.
Those are all
Yeah,
Trump
we need
people.
you to meet with President Trump on veterans issues. So finally, I said, okay, listen, veterans issues isn't about me. I said, let me bring some friends.
Yeah.
And I did. We met at the hotel in, I think it was April or May of 2015, right by the airport. And I had all the VFW Command, American Legion, DAV, Marine Corps League, sitting at the
awesome.
table,
Yeah.
with them talking veterans issues. You remember how we used to say politicians are crooked?
Sure.
I stopped them. We're sitting at the table. Now, I just met this guy, and I'm the only elected official there. And he starts saying about politicians are crooked. And I stopped him. I said, excuse me, Mr. Trump, if I was a politician, I'd have to kiss your butt and kiss the voters' butt and tell them what they want to hear. Change the whole thing. We became best of friends. Somebody told me after there, one of his staff, nobody ever talks to him like that. I don't care. I'm not looking for a job.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
And every
Sure.
event that you've been at, I know I've seen, watching TV, he calls you out. Oh,
Right.
there's Al,
Yeah,
there's my
always,
friend Al.
always.
Well, I was fortunate because, Sid and I were around the country in different places, but I was able to help write his veterans plan.
That's
And
right.
then
pretty cool.
then Corey Lewandowski and Trump, they wouldn't put it out until they sent the draft back to me. Then I sat at my table, my kitchen table. I called Dan Tamburello over. He was my co-chair, and we went through it again, made a couple changes. We sent it. A week later, they put it out. And then I was asked to travel around the country, to speak at different rallies.
Right, and we hooked up in
Yeah,
Texas at one
in
point.
Texas.
I know you were in El Paso.
South Carolina.
Well,
Yeah,
well, that's
we-
of course we left here. So the way the story goes, and this is the story that most people don't know, and that's about the strike team that left here from New Hampshire
Right.
to really do what we did here in several other states, prominent states. So so when Denise and I were, this is how the book came about. So when Denise and I started running the campaign office in Keene, it was about a month and a half after that, in December 2015, they came to me, Stuart Jolly and Matt Sipolowski, who was state director for Trump at the time, came to me and said, hey, Sid, we need somebody to run the ground campaign, and your name came up. I said, great, let's do it. What's a ground campaign?
Yeah.
What's a ground
So,
campaign?
because I had never been involved in politics, and so I got a crash course on how to run a ground campaign,
Yeah.
which, as we know, but many people don't know, is all app-driven and data-driven, and
right.
getting people out in certain coordinates and
Driving people. He was
It
driving
used to
them
be
to different
sitting
door
around
streets.
the table folding papers and stuffing envelopes.
Oh, not
and
him.
Boy.
Yeah, not
Things
him.
have
So
really
this
changed.
turned into, so from that day on, from there, my life went from about 14 to 18 hours every single day of the week. And of course, we won here in February, and that's when Stuart Jolly and Corey put together the strike team, which was Matt Sipolowski, myself, Josh Whitehouse, and a
Yep.
few other staffers, and asked us to perform the same task in several other states. So off we went to
Josh
South
Yeah.
Carolina.
was a state rep as well.
Excuse me?
Joshua
Yes,
Whitehouse.
exactly.
was a
Joshua
state rep.
Whitehouse, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then there was another state rep.
We had Joshua, we had Matt Sipolowski, we had No, I don't know another state rep.
Yeah, well, he's not a state
No,
rep anymore.
I don't think there wasn't another state rep that traveled on the strike team with us.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It was
And then
just,
I was
Josh.
part of the strike. I was out to do the veterans, to go to the
Right.
VFW, American
Mm-hmm.
Legions. Then they put, Corey wanted me out on a RV.
Yeah,
And I went, I had Jay, another soldier. That guy was awesome.
Jay Auburn.
Auburn.
Yeah.
He drove me around to different VFWs, American Legions. We set up meetings. Then they asked me to go into the VAs. I went into the VAs like a veteran, not in a suit or anything. Get some information, what's going on, talk to the veterans, then go up and see the director. But I put a suit on after that. It was fun.
It was a lot of
Yeah.
fun. And those RVs, we had two of them. We hit South Carolina when
Mm-hmm.
we left 2 days after we won here in New Hampshire. We left for South Carolina. So we would go from state to state right up to their primary date and then fly to the next state
Mm-hmm.
and perform the same task. But when we hit South Carolina, the deputy state director there, James Eppley, had these two RVs that were outfitted with Trump everything all over them. They
Yeah,
were
I
beautiful.
believe I saw one.
Yes, matter of fact, yeah.
I actually have a picture of me on the border of Mexico.
Oh, and I think it's one of the pictures
Yeah,
that will be added to the
Yes.
show. Yes.
Right.
I
Yeah,
text Corey Lewandowski and I said, Corey, do you want a picture on the border with the Trump eye? He said, oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
So Jay pulled it up on the
Yeah.
border. We took a picture of it, me standing by
Yep.
it.
So I wanted to, this is your first book. I wanted to hear more about your book, A Rush to Judgment, Journey with Trump, God, and Love. And it's coming out in August?
It'll be out in July.
Is
Oh,
it
in July.
done?
In July. No, it's
no.
right at the end of Page Design right now. My publisher is Page Publishing out of New York. And so I'm right at the end of Page Design. Then I go to cover design. As soon as I hit that, they put out 3,000 press releases across the country.
Is there a picture of Al in the book?
I don't think so.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Maybe you can
I'm
add
sorry.
one in.
Yeah.
You can add one in.
I'll have to
Yeah,
add one.
you ain't kidding.
How many chapters is it?
20 or 21 chapters.
And how many pages?
184. So it's not
Oh,
a very,
okay.
not a very
Yeah.
long book.
Right.
Is that like, this is a, I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay,
certainly
that's
not
a
like
big
that.
book. Yeah.
But it's a faith-based book because I talk about how God played out through my life and how He worked through me running the ground campaign from state to state. Because let's face it, this was a battle of Christianity against the evil of socialism,
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Well, you
hands
know,
down.
I was so upset and scared, at the election time. I wasn't even thinking about my own race. It wasn't even important. I was just so scared what would happen if Hillary won.
Absolutely.
And there was a lady that I talked to who lives in Londonderry who told me that a story about a fireman who heard a voice that said, no, she's not going to win. It's going to be Trump. And I'm like, wow.
Well, we certainly,
I want to hear
Denise,
more about that.
we certainly believed that this was divine intervention, no question. With hands down, not a doubt in my mind, this was divine intervention because there is not one candidate that could have done what Trump did
That's right.
and would be doing what Trump's doing. Not one.
The crowds were unbelievable, weren't they?
It was incredible. It was just
the
incredible.
rallies around the
Right.
country.
I mean, all the rallies we went to, of course. Did you go to the one in Vermont? It was always
Yes,
one of my
I
favorites.
spoke at the one in
Okay,
Vermont,
okay.
yeah.
You remember how cold it was?
Yes.
It must have been. It was wind chill of about 15 below zero, and there were
Yeah.
just thousands of
The
people
line,
waiting to get in.
unbelievable, yeah.
Right. And that particular night, this is one of the few times at the events. Now, this is all before I started the ground campaign, running the ground campaign. So we were up there, and I want to say it was the very beginning of January, and I went to help out at that event. And it was bitterly, bitterly cold. And this was the only event we did this. Everybody coming through the door, we stood in front of them and asked them if they were Trump supporters. And if you weren't allowed in.
Right.
And we had never done that before. And there was one woman who came in, and you could tell she was a lefty Looney Tune. And she
Lefty
walked
Looney
in.
Tune.
I stepped in front of her and said, welcome, ma'am. I just need to ask you, are you a Trump supporter? And she said, no, I'm not. I said, well, then, I'm sorry, but you're not invited in. You can't keep me from coming in here. I said, oh, yes, I can. No, you can't. This is a public venue. No, it's not. Mr. Trump is paying for this venue, and you already told me you're not a Trump supporter. You can't come in. You're not invited. So she starts her thing, and I turned to the two Burlington, Vermont police standing here, and said, gentlemen, they took her by the arm, screaming and yelling out, and told her, if you don't leave now, we'll arrest you for trespassing. So that was one of the more comical times. But at any rate, so once we left, we went to South Carolina, then to Texas, where we were all over Texas, and to then Ohio, from Ohio, and a great story on Ohio. And this is what we saw, and I saw this in nearly every state we went to, and especially the Rust Belt. I'll never forget a gentleman, and I talk about this in my book. And these were the heartfelt stories that really impacted you, when you were doing this. We worked literally, those hours, 14 to 18 hours a day, and that was month after month after month. I mean, it was just, this was not a job for us. This was a mission that we were on,
Yeah.
and you know what that's like. But this guy came in and he said to me, he was a Democrat, been a Democrat his whole life, and we heard this all the time, every
Big
place
time.
we went. I've been a Democrat my whole life, Sid, and I'm voting for Trump, and I'll tell you why. I had a job in a steel plant for 30 years. Company moved to Mexico. I've been without a job now for years, trying to get unemployment. I work in a retail store now, and I try to get some contracting. I go down to the Hotel 6, or they're building a hotel nearby where he lived, and he wanted to get a job, see if he could get on site and help build and make some money for his family. And he said, and they wouldn't hire me because there were so many illegal immigrants on the job working for half of what I could afford to work for.
Right.
Yeah.
And my heart just broke for this guy, and we saw that over and over and over. As we traveled to Nebraska, Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin, and then finally out to California, you just saw factories shut down everywhere. Everywhere we traveled, and people, just desolate areas, people struggling.
Right.
And that's what we all know. That's what President Trump is now changing. Which,
Yep.
I mean, what he's doing in this country now is just phenomenal.
It's unbelievable, and yet they still attack him.
Yeah, it's just.
No matter what he does, it's never right. It's a
And
shame.
are you on Twitter at all? I'm not.
I
I'm not
just
on Twitter.
did well.
I have no interest.
Twitter,
I'm on Twitter.
Yeah.
Twitter is what did me in. That's why I ended up out of the Department of Energy, was because of Twitter. And again, hence the title of the book, A Rush to
Right.
Judgment. So, and to get to that part, we win here. Naturally we won the primary. He wins. I go to the convention as a whip for Alaska, come back, and then I was running the ground campaign here with the RNC. And the big difference was they then took charge of what we were doing.
Kind of threw things off a little bit, yeah.
And as I state in my book, this was simply a job to these guys. And so when our guys, because we had volunteers like Jason Squalia, now my best friend. You know Jason.
Yeah.
Jay, I can't say enough about. Jason and I met, we were driving for motorcade early on in the campaign. That's how we met. Hit it off, and we had some volunteers like Jason, Charles Bruckerhoff, and Robert Bose were my three stalwarts that traveled with us all across the country.
And Robert's a banker, finance guy.
Yeah. He was the youngest vice president of Chase Bank, and he is just a wonderful guy.
Great guy.
So we had, if it wasn't for the volunteers like these guys, we never would have won.
Right.
I mean, it's the volunteers that really made this happen.
Were you at the rally the night before the election?
I was driving motorcade that
Oh,
night.
and Chris Ager was too. You must know Chris.
Well, we had more staff cars that night, so we had more drivers. So I don't know him by name because there were a lot of people with him that Monday night before election night. But
Well, you were there because I saw you there.
I was there. Because I was running for re-election. So what happened was I left the polls here. I go over there, the courtyard, it's packed. The police says, you can't leave. Manchester police, you gotta leave. What do you mean I gotta leave? Then I seen George walking around the side. Said, hey, George, they're telling me I gotta leave. Oh, no, you wait right there. George was, what's George?
he did advance. He was head of advance.
Right.
Oh, okay. I saw Mike. I was with Mike Biondo's wife, so I got right in.
Yeah.
Right behind Trump.
He said to me, he said, no, Trump wants you. You wait. The guy come out, brought me around the backside and put me up in the front.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, when Trump comes out, I'm on the stage, calls me up on the stage.
Yeah, he did that a lot too.
I was shocked at
We were behind him, but I didn't know it. But the cameras were in front of us, and we were on the screen the whole time. So my cousins around the country all saw it. Yeah, we saw you. We were being goofy. I'm sorry.
You've seen him in action, and I'll use South Carolina for an example with all the volunteers they got. How many? I mean, he must have moved 15 here, 20 here, different streets, door knocking.
Well, that's what it was. Is you had to set up. You had to
Right.
first denote good team leaders.
Yeah.
And then with every team leader, you would put however many people you could get in whatever size vehicle we had. And of course, I found out as we moved along, I started renting just SUVs,
Right.
no more cars, because we could get more bang for our buck. And then you would just send people out all over the state, door knocking. And
Well, what was Fred Doucette's job?
Fred was the co-chair here in New Hampshire with Steve Stefanik.
Oh, okay.
But he didn't go around, Fred didn't go around with us
Yeah,
around the country. He did in Connecticut when we were in Connecticut.
Well, I noticed you're wearing a Trump pin, and I got my supply of Trump pins from Fred Doucette.
oh, is that right? Well, that's a
That's the
you know,
original
that's
security
yeah,
pin.
right. Well, that's
Yeah.
the Trump staff pin. So if you were on staff,
And then at Politics and Eggs, I had my son and my son's best friend who had never met Trump, because that's probably the only time I'm ever going to be able to take those boys to meet all the candidates, because the next time there's an election, they'll be in college and they won't want to go
Right,
places
right,
with me. And
right.
But that year, I was able to take them around, and my son's friend hadn't met Trump yet. So we're at Politics and Eggs, and there's all these people, and how am I going to get them up there to meet Trump? I'm like, oh, I see Corey, come on. Got us
That'll
right
work.
in.
No, yeah, it was a great ride there. But yeah, no, he I can't wait to see your book when it comes
well,
out.
it's
that's for
it's
sure.
very compelling. You know, I
Do you have
talk
a
about the New
website?
Hampshire. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, do you have a website?
I have a Facebook page for the book called
Okay.
A Rush to Judgment.
A Rush to Judgment. Okay.
And the website will be set up right before the book comes out, so there will be a website.
Now, are you going to do a voice model too? Where you talk and
I'm looking into doing that. I don't know yet. When the book comes out, it'll be available online, on, you know, Amazon, etc. And then 30 days after that, it'll be available as an ebook. So, but the way the story ended, when we won, of course, and then I waited, as many did, for what your job was going to be in the Department of Energy, and you had to give 3 places where you thought you'd be a good fit. So mine ended up being the Department of Energy. 3 weeks into it, somebody from, I'm sure, the Obama administration that was already working in there decided to look at my social media, and which I hadn't touched Twitter since December 2015, when then Mr. Trump had put out a picture of the San Bernardino killers.
right.
And so I had added my disparaging remarks about them. And the media took that, twisted it to meet their narrative, and what I was referring to was jihadist Muslims, and they made it as
Right.
it was all Muslims.
It's a shame how they work.
So
Yeah.
in 3 weeks, 3 weeks later, and in 2 hours, I was out of a job. So
Some of the people that were murdered, and because I'm from California, I have connections to 3 of the victims.
is that right? Yeah, it's. I mean, you know, I was angry. It's just like millions of other Americans.
Oh, I don't
were
blame you.
angry
Did you
about it.
move down there? I mean, did
I
you?
was going to, but
Yeah.
you know, I never got to that point. You know, Denise had stayed here and was going to move down, and then 3 weeks later that happened. So that's where the book came from. I came back, and a few people close to me said, you should write a book about this, because I have some great friends in Wisconsin. Pastor Dave Ford, who wants me to come out and speak at a men's breakfast. You probably familiar with Pastor Robert Jeffers
Yes.
from the First Baptist Church of Dallas. I went there when I was in Dallas. I went to his church on a Sunday and went down and met him, and he said a prayer for me. It was just
Awesome.
wonderful. It was awesome. And so many things like that happened throughout the story. So when I came back, some people said, you have a great story, Sid. You should write a book. And I thought, I've never written a book. But so
you mentioned, you know, it has a kind of a spiritual theme to the book.
very much.
Well, that's what one of the things I love about Trump the most is he's brought God back to the White House. And
Absolutely.
he was
It's
kicked
wonderful.
out for 8 years, and now
Absolutely.
I've seen pictures of the 4 staff meetings where they all have their heads bowed.
Right, yeah, they have their prayer.
Is
time,
that right?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
No, it's unbelievable. I tell you, I'm very impressed in what he's done.
Oh,
I mean,
just a
you
great
know,
job.
and it's an honor that we had something to do and play
Absolutely.
a big part of
I
it.
mean, to have an have, again, I always say I was blessed and humbled by the experience. So I ended up, I literally prayed over the should I write a book or shouldn't I write a book?
Right.
And God put the answer in my heart, which was simply write the book from your heart, Sid. It'll be inspirational to others. And I state at the end of my book, I didn't write this book to make money. I wrote this book to be inspirational for other
Right.
people. And if it does make money, it'll be going to our charities that my wife and I like, our church and our children, and to help people.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So-
I hooked up during the campaign when Michael Flynn was, because I met him quite a few times around the country. the general there, and I hooked him up with a guy, Pasquale Scopoliti, who's a coach, a motivation coach out of Maryland, Virginia area. But anyways, we wrote a book. It's the same thing. It just came out. I can't even think of the name of it.
And Corey
Yeah,
Lewandowski
and
has a book
Corey come out with a
read
book,
his.
Trump, Let Trump Be Trump. And
Right.
I was with
Yeah.
Corey about a month and a half ago at Trump International
Well, he's
Were you?
supposed
in
to be on my
Washington.
show.
Yeah, so it was nice. I went there for dinner because I was at the White House. Then I went over there for dinner, and I was waiting because I was flying out at 10 o'clock at night, I think it was. And there was Corey and a bunch of George and a bunch of other campaign guys that, got a lot of hugs and everything.
That's
and
great.
So
That's
yeah,
great.
it was awesome.
Yeah, it was just, it was, like I say, it was really a movement, an unprecedented movement. And there was, in the back cover story of my book, I point out how they said that Trump didn't have a ground campaign, right? Remember that?
Right,
Trump
yes.
doesn't have a ground
Oh,
campaign.
they didn't know what we were doing.
And I state, but I knew we did
Right,
because
we
I
kept it quiet,
quarterbacked
yeah.
the teams all across the country. So
That's
I
right.
knew we had a good door-knocking campaign. And then when they said, Trump can't win,
2 minutes left.
okay.
Yeah,
There's no way Trump's going to win.
Right.
And I state in my book, we did not doubt for 1 second that Trump wasn't going to win.
Oh, without
I
a
knew
doubt,
he was
yeah.
because I had my finger on the pulse of America. As we traveled across the country, I was asking all my teams
The
and all my
lines,
team leaders,
yeah.
what are you hearing? And it was 70% of it
Right.
was, we love Trump.
and the lines were unbelievable.
Oh, it was incredible.
I mean, I never spoke. I think 20,000 people I spoke in front of. You know what I mean? It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
The first time I said, "Oh, wow!" You
I had
know?
more fun
Yeah.
watching TV, watching the news, and looking for people I know in the background. Like,
But this man was the key player in the ground and made things happen. And I'd be interested to see your book there. That's for
Well,
sure.
I give the behind-the-scenes look at what went on as we traveled
Right.
from state to
I
state.
look forward to
Now,
reading
let me
Arrested
ask you
Judgment.
now: if somebody here that's watching the show wants to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch with you?
You can communicate with me on the Facebook page for my book, A Rush to Judgment.
Rush to
Yep,
Judgment,
you can send a
okay.
message through that.
Maybe we'll have that print there, put up underneath there, the Rush to Judgment.
And
So
you can come back on once the book is out, and
yeah.
we can have it
That'd
featured
be-
on the
yeah, that'd
coffee
be great.
table.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we're going to be in a few seconds here taking a break, and then we're going to come back with a guy, Navy veteran, Eddie Edwards, running for Congress there. I don't know if you know Eddie
I do.
Edwards.
I
I
do.
actually
Great guy.
endorsed Eddie. He's awesome. I've known him for about 12, 13 years and stuff.
I'm with the Federation of Republican Women, so
she
I
can't take a
have to stay
position.
neutral, but I get to like all of the candidates, so that's fine
My wife
with me.
Denise is as well.
Yes, I know. That's how I know her.
Yeah, okay.
Well, any last second closings for Sid?
No, but it's been nice chatting with you, and I'm going to see
Thank
you
you.
again on
Yeah,
another
thank
show.
you. Sid, it's an
Thanks for
honor. We'll
having
see
me
you
on.
again.
Thank
and
you. I'll just-
hopefully
Thanks for having me
we'll be
on.
together in 2020 again
I hope
with
so.
Trump.
Yes.
I hope so.
I'm just not looking for a job, so, you know,
Neither am I.
I'm happy doing what I'm doing.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll be right back with Who's Looking Out for You.